There are some books that have been on my TBR for far too long, and I just keep putting them off for some reason or another. But for Bookmas, we are going to be talking about the books that are going to self-destruct if I don't read them within the next year. Thanks so much to Becca for this original idea. I will leave all of her information down in the description box below for you guys to check out. But basically, there are 10 books here that if I don't finish them by the end of 2025, then I just have to unhaul them because obviously I wasn't going to prioritize them. Some of these are a little scary because it means that I would have to unhaul an entire series, which feels like a big commitment, but I need to get these books read or I need to get them out of my house and save me some shelf space. So let's talk about the first one. There's a little bit of everything on here. I tried to go through and be very selective about what books that I still was semi-interested in, but knew that if I did not get to them, I never would. The first one is going to be She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. I have had this book since it originally came out because this is the Illumicrate edition, and I've heard so many good things about this, but it's historical, and historical is not really my thing. I don't tend to gravitate toward them. I don't tend to love them, but I've heard so many good things about this fantasy that I really still want to give it a try. The one thing that I think made me put it on the back burner a little bit more than I had before though is this is I think it's a duology, and I've heard that the second book was not very good, and so I was like, I don't want to invest in the first book if the second book and the ending isn't worth it, but at the same time I've heard this book is still worth it. So let me know down in the comments if you think that I would enjoy this if I need to make it a higher priority, because I've heard so many good things and I do want to read it, but it scares the crap out of me. Then we have Fury Born by Claire Legrand. This is a book that I heard amazing, phenomenal 10 out of 10 things about when it first came out, and then after that I slowly started to hear more mixed reviews and it put me off a little bit. I also read the first chapter of this and it was generally fine, but it did not grab me, make me want to read more. I am still interested in this. I do still want to try something from Claire Legrand, but this book in particular does make me a little bit nervous. So let me know. Let me know for all of these if you think that I should make them a priority. This is a young adult semi-romantasy. I think it's just mostly a young adult fantasy, but has a romantasy subplot. It's two young women centuries apart. Like, the idea sounds really cool, but the execution does scare me just a little bit. Then I have one that I'm actually 50 pages into and have been 50 pages into for the last year. So might be time to unhaul this one if I don't make it a priority. But this is one of those that if I unhaul this one, I have to unhaul the whole series. And that's Valor by John Gwynne. This is part of a 4-book series. I own all 4. And then I would probably also get rid of Shadow of the Gods, which is one of his newer series. And I really liked Malice. I enjoyed it quite a bit. And then started Valor and had waited too long. Couldn't remember who anybody was. I was like, I'll get to it later. And I never did. So I really need to pick this back up. I haven't been reading as much epic fantasy recently. I do hope to get back into that sometime in the future. Maybe this will be the book that kicks it off for me, but yeah, if I don't get to this one in the next year, then the whole series just needs to go. Next up is a Jennifer L. Armentrout, and I actually have gotten rid of the Flesh and Fire and From Blood and Ash series that I owned. They're in the closet. They're not committed out of my house because I'm still like, but what if I wanted to go back to that series? But they're at least kind of out of sight, out of mind. Mostly I just fell off when we had the book from the guy's point of view. I hate it when authors do that. I do not want to read the same book from a different point of view. I've already read it. If I wanted to reread it, I would just reread it. Like, I don't have a problem with them doing it, but don't make it a mandatory part of the series. And she sprinkled like 1 or 2 chapters every 100 pages that was relevant in the present day, so you kind of had to read it to continue, but I hated that. So I got about halfway through it and was like, nope, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And the Flesh and Fire series, just by extension, kind of got put by the wayside. That's kind of unofficially on this as well, but the one that I'm going to officially be saying is Fall of Ruin and Wrath by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I've actually read the first chapter of this and I really enjoyed it, but for some reason just haven't picked it back up yet. I actually haven't owned this for that long. I mean, it came out, when did it come out? 2023. So it's only a little over a year old. It's fine, but I've heard this is very spicy, which makes me nervous. Typically super spicy books are just, I miss the plot, I miss the banter, I miss the relationship development, but I've been leaning more into my romantasy era and my romantasy spice recently. So hopefully this is one that I will still enjoy. The concept sounds really interesting, but I think it's like succubus, so that's why it's a little bit more spicy, but I do still want to give this one a try, so it at least needs to stay on my radar. Then we have again another entire series, and that is going to be the Dark Tower series. I read Gunslinger, actually found it pretty pretty interesting, and I've heard that Gunslinger is one of the like lesser good books in the series, but just for some reason never continued on with it. Such a beloved fantasy series, but I don't know, there's just something about it that is extremely intimidating. Part of it's the length. I can like sit here and see my shelves of how many books there are and how much progressively they get bigger with each book, but part of it is just, I don't know, I'm just not sure if this series is going to be for me, if it's something that I'm going to continue to love in my current romantasy era, but we'll see. I do want to try to at least prioritize this second book. This is the only one. I'm not talking about the series as a whole, but if I don't get to this book, then I do need to unhaul the series as a whole. Then we have The Hawkling by Rebecca Zahabi. This is actually the second book after The Collar Bound, which I really enjoyed. I gave it 5 stars and I loved it. I thought the magic system was so interesting. Then this book came out. I wasn't in the mood to read it at the moment. Some of my friends read it, said that it was just okay, but more of the same. And it made me kind of nervous because the first book was all magic, no plot. And I was like, okay, the plot, the politics, everything's gonna expand in book 2. And apparently it didn't. And so I just never made it a priority. And this is one of those books that if I don't get to this year, I won't remember enough to continue on even if I wanted to. We may already be getting to that point. So I either need to prioritize this or I need to just unhaul both books. Another romantasy, and one that I'm very sad to put on this list because this author wrote one of my favorite duologies of all time, and that is Carissa Broadbent and Daughter of No Worlds. I love Serpent and the Wings of Night. Love it. One of my favorite duologies / series of all time. This one scares me to death. I've heard that this is much more friends to lovers, soft main character, soft relationship, and I like stabby female main characters with lots and lots of banter. And some people that I love and trust, like Cassidy's read this book, she didn't really love it. Maria read it, Esme read it, and they both loved it, but they do tend to enjoy a more introspective character than I do. So between all of those people, this scares me. But I own the entire series in this beautiful indie hardcover, so I'm just like, can they just sit there? Can they just sit there and look pretty and I'll just never read them and then I'll never have to unhaul them? That's kind of where I'm at with this book. But it is time for me to either read it or get rid of it. I need to make the decision because they do take up a lot of room on my shelf, and I do want to read Carissa's backlist, so like I just need to read this book. Then we have one that Lexi tried to get me to unhaul at the very beginning of the year when she was here, and I was just like, but what if I hold on to it a little bit longer? So it's time to officially put it on the self-destruct TBR, and that is The Book of Accidents by Chuck Wendig. I think that I'm going to really enjoy the concept of this book and not like the exposition and all of the writing that comes with it. I've heard that this is just extremely slow, drags on for a while. It's a horror, but it is a chunky horror, and most of the time any horror books that are over 400 pages typically feel very long and drug out to me, and that's what I'm concerned about with this one. But it does say that it is a literary horror, which makes me very nervous. I have liked some literary horror this year, but overall I tend to need more going on than that kind of in your head introspective, just like we were talking about with Daughter of No Worlds character. So we'll see. I just need to make this a priority because there are a lot of books of his that I actually am interested in, so I need to read this one, decide if his writing is for me, and then I can pick up more books by him. And last but not least is one that's going to make a few people sad, and it's also one that I will need to unhaul the whole series if I don't get to, and that's Murderbot with The Network Effect. I was doing well. I was bebopping through the novellas. I liked them. I didn't love them. I wasn't obsessed with them like everybody was, but I was enjoying them. And then I got to the full-length book and was like, that seems like a big commitment, and just never picked it up, never read it. And now we're at the point where I probably need to reread the novellas before I read this one, and that just seems like a lot of work. So I either need to make this a priority, like I've said with everything else, or in 2025, I do need to just unhaul this whole series, cut my losses, and say, it's a good idea, I'm glad everyone else loves it, but it's just not for me. We'll still be watching the movie / TV show when it comes out, but I just think that this is a little bit too character focused, a little too, again, in the character's head with not enough going on. And while I think Murderbot is a really cool character, one that I can really appreciate, I just need a little bit more to be happening, which may mean that I like the full novel and need to try it, and maybe the novellas were what didn't work for me, but again, it's scary. It seems like a lot. So those are the 10 books that if I don't read them before the end of the year are going to self-destruct off my TBR. I will need to be unhauling them if they're not read by the end of 2025. Tell me on this list which ones I should make like my hyper priority, which ones should I be absolutely sure that I try before I unhaul them, because there are a lot of good books on here. There are a lot of books that I'm still really interested in, but for some reason or another just can't make myself pick them up. So maybe you could be my kick in the pants to pick these books up. Thank you guys so very much for watching. If you want to let me know that you were here and hanging out, leave me a bomb emoji emoji because these are going to self-destruct. If you've missed out on any of the earlier bookmas videos, I will leave the most recent one on the screen here for you guys to check out. As always, thank you guys so very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.